There's just 1 minute to showtime.
The engines are on.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
When they wrote up the systems and the rule set that we use, did working people get to write a line? What class of men on pen and paper jotted down their clues? With capital the heart of their design. When 90 million want a thing, but some shareholders say no. Which class of people get to have their way? The people read the fine print and say that this thing has got to go. And we'll start writing a new contract here today. Don't you know that hundreds will work and one man keeps the money? They don't think they gotta tell us why. When they say the new social contract, all the bosses will be gobsmacked and everyone will want a sign. Oh, everyone will want a sign.
Okay, all right. Only minor tech meltdowns to begin the show with. And yes, we do have the best theme song in leftist podcasting, courtesy of our own Mr. Mayor Jared. It never gets old with me. I'm always kicking it to the theme song while I'm trying to get things moving and going in the last couple of seconds of everything. So, yeah, like I said, just some minor meltdowns to 2 seconds before air. No problem though. Here we are. We all deal with the same shit. So, especially internet problems and tech problems in this country. So we all know we're all in the same boat. But anyway, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. We're happy to have you. We are live. We get questions about that pretty frequently. And but I'm happy to address that we are live with you right now. So if you are seeing us, we don't have to hold up the newspaper. You could just take our word for it that we are live people alive, and we are not robots, and we are not using AI filters, and we are going to be having some real human conversation today. It's funny. You'd think that we're just like a little over an hour, usually run about an hour, and things wouldn't be happening, like all hell breaking loose, while we're on the air. We need to start having like a news ticker or something up and as we're going, because while we were on the air last week, South Korea had a fucking meltdown and went into martial law, and it was like in and out of it before we were even hardly off the air. And it was just the whole week has been like that. It's just news story after news story after news story. So we're going to try to get to as much as we possibly can today. Some really interesting stuff happened. New folk hero just dropped. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit. But let me introduce my illustrious co-host, which I've managed not to do so far. I am here joined today by our own Mr. Mayor Jared. Hello, Jared. I hope that you are well and your world travels have been going well.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon. It's the only bad thing about showing. Like always, I got in kind of late last night, and now I'm here this morning. So if I'm clearing my throat even more than usual, that is why.
That's all right. We got to do what we got to do. So, and it's all part of it. Because again, we're live, we're humans. That's what we do. So yes, we're very happy to be here with you. We're happy to have things working and not falling apart at the last second. Hello to the chat. Hi to Are You Time Traveler 2, one of our regular viewers. Glad to have you with us. Yes. First of all, we don't really have much to say about South Korea because that whole thing kind of like burned itself out. It just happened real fast.
I would have more to say about it if I had a better understanding of the situation, but I'm still kind of bamboozled by the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of where we have to come from a lot of the time is we're not like actual like real journalists like TM, like we're not like real journalists, so we're just like people with opinions, so we don't necessarily have information any more than anybody else does, so we rely on what we hear. And you think, and that's a lot of what's going on right now. We were going to talk a little bit about what's going on in Syria, but we're again in the speculation zone because it was a real whiplash situation with what's going on in Syria. For about a week, it was like these guys, no these guys, no these guys, no these guys, and this is happening, but it didn't happen. So, and it's like even with people that you trust and opinions that you trust, like you can't always just take one person or a few people at face value. You really need to do your own research at what's going on, whatever it is. So it took me a long time to try to get an understanding of what was going on. But headline, it's the greater Israel shit that we're always talking about. It's just the next move in the U.S. sponsored takeover of the Middle East to take over the region and aggravate Iran and Saudi Arabia in particular, and try to make them bend to the American imperialistic will. So that's basically what's going on. There's some nuance in that conversation, which we'll kind of unpack here a little bit in a few minutes. But if you take nothing else from that, just know that it's as you could guess, it's just more of the same, marching forward.
Looking at the Syria situation, I like that's one where I feel like I have the tiniest bit more of understanding with the South Korea situation. I'd always rather say nothing about a thing than say a bunch of wrong things about a thing, at least whenever I can. But look, with the Syria situation, if you look at who is happy about the results, like the fact that Israel seems pretty stoked about this, that seems to be a clue as to I don't know. If you feel a certain way about Israel, maybe you could take that into account with how they seem to feel about the regime change in Syria.
Yeah, and it's sort of what I found confusing about it is, there was people that were saying, "Oh, it's the rebels, it's ISIS," and it's like, who the fuck is it? And then you realize, oh, just pull the mask off. It's just America. It's just Israel doing more of America's bidding. Of course it is. Why would it be some just magic dust up that happens right in the region, while they're waging war on everyone? And then they had the whole ceasefire nonsense with Lebanon, which did not happen from their end, and everyone was just fine with it, I guess. So there was that. This was a big week in events. And so we'll talk a bit about that. Something really cool that happened that, again, as we're kind of in the speculation zone, is that China was like, hey, cool, you want to mess around with this new president coming in, Trump, newish, you want to mess around with our economy, you want to play tariff games, fine. We're not going to send you any of your critical minerals you need to send off to other countries to make your cell phones and your computer chips, which I think is rad because, Trump has postured about tariffs and about, BRICS and about un-American nonsense. He doesn't even know what he's talking about, and he'll get bored and move on, just a few minutes anyway from one thing to the next. So we have a little bit of information on that. We're going to see that story unfolding. And then, of course, the big story is the healthcare, the shooting, the shooter. We're less about the identity politics of it and more about we need healthcare now. And this is a great moment to really push for it. Everybody tried to push for it 2020. Things fell apart because things were crazy at the time. We're a little more savvy, I think, as a culture at this point in knowing what we want. And this is the time to not let up. And I think it's really important to say that for legal reasons, we can't exactly say that, or I can't exactly say that I hope that there is a copycat incident. So I won't say it. But we'll get into that. We're going to get into that. But we're going to start off with talking about China, see what's going on with China and their pushback against incoming President Trump. So what do you have for us, Mr. Jared?
The as always, we are going to talk about China. If you had a
we always
game,
do. Inevitably, it always comes back to China. This is not a plan. It's not a plot. We're not getting paid. I wish we were. But inevitably, it always comes back to China. So let's see.
You've probably been hearing about various tariffs and trade war things with China since like the first Trump administration, because he was throwing that around there. It does give you the perception that like Trump was ratcheting up China anger like as if, oh, we were totally cool with China before this, and then Trump came in and made things weird. But I mean, that I don't think that is the case. For instance, but China is now getting economically large enough that it can retaliate in some ways, which everyone kind of predicted and is happening. And hey, guess what? It's more about chips and more things that could potentially get things going with Taiwan. If you're trying to figure out where World War III will start specifically,
The
even though I
Battle of
think it kind of already did.
Taiwan, which America has been very open about already plotting and planning and wanting to get going by like 2026. It's like, what are you even talking about? Who does this? But like, we'll put that in the schedule. We're going to do war with China starting 2026. Stupid.
So we're reading from Al Jazeera US here. Tech wars. Why has China banned exports of rare minerals to the U.S.? The two countries have imposed tit-for-tat export restrictions for months to hamper technological and AI development. Then we have a picture of some technology. Semiconductor products. There you go. See Taiwan. We're all
yeah, all right. You can tell me it was anything. I just believe you. Oh, these are the unicorn packets. Okay.
China has banned the export of rare but critical earth minerals used in the manufacture of important semiconductors to the United States, in the latest move in an ongoing tech war between the two superpowers. Beijing's announcement on Tuesday came just one day after the U.S. ramped up restrictions on the export of advanced chips to China, which affects the country's ability to develop advanced weapon systems and artificial intelligence. And you might be thinking, like, oh, we're not even in the Trump administration yet, and he's supposed to be the big I'm going to fight China guy, and that's what I meant in the intro. It's just general U.S. foreign policy to do this regardless of who is in charge. So why is it's funny they call it a tech war. A tech war sounds like you're like programming at each other, but this is just a war. I guess it happens to be sort of about tech things. Yeah, that's what I mean. Brewing between the China and the U.S. And why does it matter? Why are China and the U.S. embroiled in a tech war? For months, the two countries have been involved in tit-for-tat. Guys, you already said this, Al Jazeera. Tit-for-tat export restrictions. The U.S. hopes to cripple China's military and artificial intelligence advances, as well as hamper its ambitions to become a global leader in clean energy and other technologies. The trade war is affecting global supply chains for chip and semiconductor manufacturers and pushing prices up. U.S. trade and diplomatic relations with China under President Joe Biden have declined to their lowest point in recent years, largely because of disputes about technology. China's military growth, human rights record, what the U.S. calls China's aggressive actions in the region, such as its military drills in the South China Sea, which it lays claim to, and several other issues. I'm concerned about America's aggressive actions in the Gulf of Mexico, which it lays claim to. This week's trade dispute comes before U.S. President-elect Donald Trump is sworn into office in January. He also takes a hawkish stance towards China and has promised to impose even heavier sanctions on Beijing, as well as a whopping 60% tariff on all Chinese goods. So it's not exactly like Trump is looking to show up and like make big friends with China from the sounds of things, but this could be perceived as the current administration running around trying to shore up its wars before Trump gets into office, if you believe still that he is going to lessen these wars. I mean, suddenly, look, things are popping off everywhere. Syria's going down. China we're fighting with more than ever. It seems like hurry, we have to get locked into certain policies before the administration changes. And that happens every time an administration changes. I'm not saying that's like a unique thing they're doing because Trump is coming in, but here it is. Even though Trump himself is like, I'm going to put a 60% tariff on all Chinese goods. I've seen other people pointing out where you can, they're like just lists of these minerals and where they can be found within the United States. And my response to that is like, yeah, I mean, that does seem valid actually. Why aren't we doing industry here in the U.S.? And they're like, well, do you want us to like destroy the planet and do all these mining up? Well, you can mine in more or less destructive ways. And what are you saying? You just think we should be destroying China and not the U.S.?
Yeah, the first line right at the beginning, I think, was really telling about the American or U.S. is making an attempt to cripple China's ability to produce technology and green energy. Who sounds like the bad guy in this scenario?
It's funny when they say they're trying to become a leader in green technology, and it's like, no, they are the leader.
And it's like, if you ask, like, if you just did like a poll suddenly, like of everybody in the United States, like how many people would be like, yeah, fuck China, fuck green energy, fuck all that. Like, give me a break. Like, nobody wants that. This is just political war politics where they're just trying to make money and further enrich themselves, just like always. And it has just gotten absolutely out of control in recent years. You know, we've always been a war country that made our money off of war, even war against our own selves. And now it is just like the top domestic grossing, or I guess international grossing industry in the world at this point, and nobody's forgotten that.
China is definitely not, like we were talking about England last week, spending $1 billion to burn off all their extra wind energy instead of putting it into.
Yeah, no, they're actually, using it, and America takes that as a threat because we want everybody to be poisoned and enslaved and breathing coal dust for the rest of time.
So we got restrictions on China-bound shipments of high bandwidth memory chips. This might mean things to people who are more versed than I am, but which are essential for high-end applications, including AI training, 24 additional chip-making tools, 3 software tools, and chip-making equipment made in countries such as Singapore and Malaysia, with the aim being to slow down China's development of advanced AI and hamper its ability to produce semiconductors. Like, this just sounds like if this was, instead of 2 countries, just like 2 companies competing to try and blah, 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 over. Which is really kind of the more frustrating part of all of this, is whenever we're doing this, we're trying to kneecap each other's ability to advance technology. I'm like, but I, as a person who lives on Earth, would like maybe some advanced technology.
Exactly. That's exactly my point. Like, nobody wants this in either country. And the people that are going to end up having to do the bidding of, these 2 countries, I'm not saying that China is not like the hero in the story, but it's like, obviously they're doing the right thing. And if America attacks them, and as we're constantly pushing up on their borders and in their ocean area, like, obviously they're going to have to meet the occasion. So people are going to die, primarily poor people, that have been inscripted into these situations. And in the meantime, the 1% at the top of the heap is the one that benefits from all of this, and they're going to just keep finding people to have wars with, and that's where we are now. And I, for one, don't know how you stop that from happening, because it's what I say all the time. It's runaway capitalism. We're completely out of control here. The proletariat is like not being heard or served in any meaningful way at this point. And I can get into historical precedent, but we just don't have time for that. So
let me list a couple of these specific minerals, just in case people are curious. And it's announcement on Tuesday. Okay, we have the Chinese Ministry of Commerce said it had banned exports of key minerals like gallium, germanium, and antimony to the U.S.
This shit doesn't even sound real. That's stuff from like superhero movies. That's Marvel stuff.
These are important for the manufacturing of semiconductors. This I feel like I'm repeating myself. This article repeats itself. But this move is a broadening of restrictions already in place. In July 2023, China introduced a requirement for exporters to apply for special licenses to export gallium and germanium to the U.S. In October 2023, Beijing also tightly regulated sales of graphite products, which are required to produce car batteries. Super hard materials, such as lab-grown diamonds and other synthetic materials that are used industrially, are also on China's ban list, announced this week. I'm going to scroll down to where we got some Chinese official quotes here. I want to reiterate that China firmly opposes the U.S. overstretching the concept of national security, abuse of export control measures, and illegal unilateral sanctions and long-arm jurisdiction against Chinese companies, says Lin Jian, a Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson. So, like, overstretching the concept of national security, which is a thing the U.S. does all the time, where if we want to do a thing, we just go, oh, it's for national security. Like, we gotta tap all your phones, national security.
Yeah.
Oh, we gotta mess with China's tech thing, because national security. They might make a better bomb than us or something. Like, I kind of agree there. I mean, when they try to say that, like, China doesn't have a right to be hanging out in, like, its own ocean that are right off its own coast.
Yeah, right.
That somehow affects America.
But our battleships can just be there. Like, that's cool. Like, no, come on.
It affects American national security for them to be in the South China Sea. China being in the South China Sea is a real big problem. Meanwhile, the U.S. has conquered literal nations in order to get aquatic footholds. Why do we have Guam and Hawaii again? What's their Samoa, etc.
Yeah.
Guam, basically a military base that has a country slightly attached to it.
Yeah.
All right. That's all I got for China bans. I mean,
this is going to be an unfolding situation. Trump's not even in office yet. Won't be till the end of next month.
This is Biden China action.
Yeah, this is still all connected to that. We'll see. It remains to be seen if they will hit the ground running. Some administrations do, usually Republican administrations. Some don't. Some go right for the executive orders on things. Some just coast. So
I really think this article was written by AI because it just repeats itself so many times.
oh my god, it's so obnoxious. I get, like, you can usually, sometimes it'll say at the bottom like written by AI, but
You gotta edit this
edited
thing.
by a person's name. And I think a lot of places have gotten hip to that it makes people mad, so they just make up a fake name and say that of an author that doesn't actually even exist.
Shola Lawal, this thing reads like you were trying to up your word count for like an essay you're turning in.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at this point. This is something that a lot of outlets are doing, and that's again kind of goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning. Even if you're getting the opinions of somebody that that you generally align with or trust, you really got to do your own research, because not to say any one person is doing this. Indie journalism is more important than ever because of AI. And we're all losing our jobs to it, and everybody eventually will. It's not some spooky if, but when. So check and recheck what you're hearing from people. If you see a weird article that repeats itself over and over or uses weird language, or if you hear somebody saying something that you don't necessarily think is true, try to back that up from any methods that you have, basically, until you can get a more formed opinion on something.
There is a orange cat that I have not seen before outside of my window. Checking out there.
I can tell you from your face, you're craning your neck. You have I see a cat.
It's like, what's this cat doing?
I love it.
Our neighbors moved out who had a bunch of cats that they just kind of let outside. So now their cats are gone with them. So now new cats are there's just so many freaking feral cats in our area, which I think is most places.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. I live in an area that adjoins another area where people move in and out frequently, and that's always been the case. So they will just abandon their cats, and it's like, who's going to take care of them? Luckily, this isn't like a big cat danger area with too many bad people, but a lot of people, including ourselves, are I've got 4 cat shelters out in my backyard. I've got food and water all the time. So and I hope that all people are doing that. Just try to take care, because people just are not responsible, and they act like cats are disposable. So
our neighbor 2 over participates in he's like an older retired guy, and he participates in the catch and release program where he catches these cats, takes them to the Humane Society, they give them their shots and neuter them and send them back out.
Yeah, I think there's this case with this one we've got roaming around right now, which I think is an unneutered male, but they had a collar on it at some point. And I just want to get out there, if you're keeping an unneutered male cat in your house, you're a freak. Don't do that. That is the grossest shit in the world. Obviously they're not going to behave properly, and they're going to spend a unneutered or unspayed cat in your house is not good, no matter what. Get that shit taken care of. There are discount places where you can have that done, sometimes even for free. You just got to look up the resources and take them in. Don't just turn them out, or because they won't stay in. You're just making a bigger problem for other people, and you're making really sad lives for cats. So anyway, PSA there for a minute. It's important. That's really important stuff, though. And you're just making it harder on other people at the end of the day, and making sad animals. So don't.
There's the reason I don't have any. I very much love pets. We don't have any ourselves because we just think, well, we have to leave home too often, or just the tiniest. But the idea that we wouldn't be able to provide for them in every possible way keeps us from even getting one.
Yeah.
And then we see our neighbors who just have 30 cats just flopping around all over the place. They don't know where they are, whether they're coming or going. All right, you want to talk? We can talk briefly about Syria. I'm gonna sound.
Yeah.
I don't want. It's not that I want to sound wishy-washy. It's just this is one of those situations where, like most things, in another 5 to 10 years, we're going to be looking at this oh, well, obviously, but I'm not totally sure which way. There's always a chance that I'm just getting lied to, and I am completely wrong and a dumb moron, and listening to people who are evil grifters and trying to trick me.
This has been a hard. No, you're exactly right. This one's been a hard one to souse out. This has been very confusing. I have been really confused about. I mean, obviously you can't listen to CNN or ABC News or something like that, but you also, it seems like sometimes that'll be one of those things where leftists will have a really radical opinion about it, and you're like, wait a minute, and then you go and find another one, you're like, this sounds more reasonable. And this has been a very confusing situation, very confusing, very whiplash.
Things I know to be true, because it starts to come down to, it becomes an argument between like everything, we have to assign valor, goodness, justice, and purity to like one side or the other.
Yeah.
Where since this is a human conflict happening on Earth, both sides, God, I hate that expression.
Conflict is
Both sides
conflict.
are gonna both sides are gonna have problems. Both sides are gonna have potential positives depending on how like what your goals and opinions are.
Right.
Like if you say anything, if you are like me, if you insinuate that the toppling of the Assad regime, another fun, he's a regime. If you said the Biden regime, people would be like, what? Assad, the previous like legitimate elected government of Syria, which is all that is also debated depending on who you talk to. But we know for a fact that the CIA, FBI, etc., is very interested in Syria going down, just like it was very interested in Libya going down. There's various meetings with people who are like, "There's the 7 countries that we need to take over in the next like 10 years." Pepper, you're a conspiracy person. No, this is just like out in the open. This isn't hidden. This is
No,
like
they don't
in
hide this.
interviews. They're like,
Right.
we're gonna get these 7 countries, and they now that's it. Syria was like the last one on that list. It was like Iraq, Iran, no, well, not Iran, Iraq and Libya, etc.
Yeah, we'll get there eventually. That's
And
but
Syria.
that's exactly right. This is following directly in the footsteps of Iraq with Saddam Hussein and Libya with Muammar Gaddafi. This is as soon as these other countries start to get on their feet, get in a good economic area, start trading with anybody that's not the United States, they are deemed a threat. And here we go again.
Like Gaddafi is a kind of a cool counterexample here. Well, I guess similar parallel situation where if you say like, hey, Libya was doing better when Gaddafi was running it, that is not the same statement as Gaddafi was a perfect angel person who never did anything wrong.
Exactly.
Or I agree with everything Gaddafi said and did. And it also, if people start putting on blinders, or like, oh, all these weird, unique dictators who do all this crazy shit, and it's like, have you looked at our own leadership? Like, all of our leaders went to the Epstein Island, and
yeah. It's
Gaddafi
so
wearing
confusing.
weird clothes and had ladies as his security guards. What a psychopath! And it's like, it is weird. I don't think it's not weird.
Yeah, no, it's just like it's exactly what you're saying. People are so I don't know what makes people's brains work this way, but
Joe
we have
Biden
to
took a shower with his daughter. Like, she
we
wrote
have
about
to
this.
dichotomize like good versus evil. It's Marvel brain. It's
Trump talks
superhero
all the
brain.
time about how he wants to bang his daughter. Like, they're all fucking
Right.
creepy psychopaths, but
And
only
they
the
get passes
foreign
right
ones.
and left. Exactly. That's exactly true. Like we have to look, make people seem to have this logic about good versus evil. That's not a thing. Like that doesn't exist in any capacity in humanity. There is no good versus evil. We all do good things and we all do bad things. And sometimes they're out of proportion. And sometimes when people have a lot of like resources and money, those bad things get worse. And that's literally, and then more people join in into the bad things. And you very much see that out of proportion. So yes, it's very easy to look at literally any country, any regime, and say you are bad, but people don't. You shan't. And a lot of that also does have to do. Let's bring it back to racism. You always, you have this idea that like, oh, the pure white amazing Americans are the good guys, and the Europeans and anybody off of that scale are the bad guys. So you get real lizard brained with a lot of people on that.
It's funny how many people I know who call themselves on the left, who talk all day about like intersectionality and racial issues and various different identity things, who just whenever it comes to like that is kind of the wallpaper slapped over the U.S. empire. This whole like manifest destiny thing of like,
Right.
we the Western blah blah are supposed to take over because we're the ones who can truly run shit and everyone else is dumb. And
with
so,
our
like,
larger brains and our better
But they just-
ambitions.
they just co-sign on to that because what U.S. imperial activity do they oppose? I guess the Israel one, but like kind of that one's like the outlier where
Yeah.
basically everyone is together on that one. Quote right,
Yeah.
quote left. Like basically everybody is over sending billions and billions of dollars to Israel.
Right.
But like when it comes to Ukraine, they can't figure it out. They're just like, no, the U.S. is correct in doing whatever it wants to do. When it comes to Syria, when it comes to Libya, when it comes to Iraq before
again,
Iraq toppled, they were all
Yeah, well,
about it.
There's a race issue in that too. Ukrainians are white, so they
Yeah,
like
are Russians white?
Yeah, but
You know what I
but
mean?
I get your point. There definitely is nuance in there, but it's like it's easier to convince the masses that that they are the good guys because we've been so programmed as society of all time to think that anybody not white is the bad guy.
So in Syria, you have Assad on one side, who people have various very valid criticisms of, and then on the other side you have what is now called HTS. You're like, well, who's HTS? Well, it's like a combination of Al Qaeda and ISIS. so
That
so
sounds
is
fake.
so is this so is the side that you support ISIS? Because like, if Assad has to be perfect in order for you to have the opinion that, hey, maybe things were better going back to Gaddafi, it is difficult to argue that Libya was not in better conditions while Gaddafi was running it than after the government was toppled. Libya is fucked up now. Like, it wasn't a paradise before. There is no magical place, but apparently they have just like I keep hearing the phrase open slave markets where
Yep.
you can buy people in Libya again, I guess.
Yes.
Like, Gaddafi was running around talking about making the United States of Africa in the same way that the Eurozone made the Euro. He's like, we should do the Afro, and we should all start coming
Right.
together. And whenever you start like developing, the empire cannot have you develop, because if you develop, you might gain control of your own resources and people and
Right.
be able to, like what's happening in Burkina Faso, how France just really
Yeah.
wants all their uranium. Why does Burkina Faso look like hell and France looks beautiful? Like, why is the country that produces all these resources that allows France to look so beautiful, allows France to develop? Because they're being artificially kept from developing. And that's the point of a lot of these wars, especially in the Middle East. They don't really care if Syria is run by fucking ISIS or Assad or freaking Hitler. They don't care.
No.
As long as it can't develop, because they're constantly in chaos and we can stand around in the oil fields. The U.S. is still occupying about a third of Syria, the third that has the wheat and oil fields. I think it's wheat. You know, the farmland and the oil, which if you control, how can you possibly start to get your shit together? You can't get your food. You can't get probably your biggest export and moneymaker. Have fun, Assad. Why didn't you solve all the problems?
Right. Yeah. And it makes them all beholden to the United States or, NATO, European Union, whatever you want to look at it. It's exactly because, what does America do well? Slavery. Like it gets these countries into a situation where that they are, well, same with France and the same with, England and, Britain, the whole area. It gets them into a situation where they are beholden. Their survival is dependent on, if the will Americans be generous with us now?
And if Assad was
Have we
willing,
been good little boys?
and if you, as whatever a leader of your country or the puppet leader of your country, are willing to
Right.
just say, "Sure, U.S., do whatever you want. I'll just be kind of like the broker. Here you go. Here's access to our things. What law do you want me to write? Sure, I'll draft that up. We'll get Congress working on it. If you're that, you're fine. You're Turkmenistan. You're all these countries that have Turkmenistan has a literal dictator, but the U.S. loves them because they'll just we're allowed to do whatever we want there. They have nice deals with us. Frickin' South Korea's a lot like that. Vietnam would have been like that." Countries where we overthrow whatever's revolution, you're allowed to stay in power as long as you do whatever stuff the U.S., or at least are trying to do whatever stuff the U.S. wants you to do. Look at all of South America. It's just very gradually coming out of that now, where not every South American leader is a U.S. puppet person. Frickin' Canada basically has a U.S. puppet government.
Right. Yeah. It's got to be U.S. approved, or it's getting overthrown and some idiots getting put into place. So.
Okay, so let's read a little bit of this. And the final ingredient of people will bring up. Well, Jared, you weren't even mentioning Assad did all these war crimes and gas bombed his own people. And I'm not gonna say I know for certain that did not happen, but there's about as much there's a WMD's kind of conversation about it, where the State Department really wants you to think that happened to justify this war, and then there's all these little journalists running around no, we looked into this, we have all these sources, and blah blah blah. That totally did not happen at all. And you guys are making this up as a justification to go into war. 50 beheaded babies.
Right, yeah. And it's okay, so does America not tear gas crowds? That's chemical warfare, guys. Anyway.
The number of times that we've been lied about these kind of events makes me suspicious. I don't really know, and I could be swayed by compelling evidence, but I am keeping some skepticism about Assad killed a bajillion children in a row. He just took a big sword and blah, 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 just killed every
himself.
He did it. All right. The toppling of the Assad regime following a swift operation by rebel forces, meaning ISIS and Al Qaeda, on Sunday. After that, Israel moved in. Israel was super happy about Assad getting toppled, by the way, so consider that. The Israeli military launched half a dozen airstrikes on Syrian targets and parked tanks inside Syria's borders in violation of a 50-year ceasefire pact. Israeli airstrikes on Sunday targeted apparent missile and chemical weapons stock. Oh, geez, my coffee. And chemical weapons stockpiles. Israel's foreign minister Gideon Saar said the attacks were meant to keep those weapons from being used by, quote, extremists. The Israeli military on Sunday evening positioned its troops near 5 Syrian villages with a demilitarized zone just to the east of the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights, which Israel seized from Syria. God damn it. Which Israel seized from Syria in 1967 and later illegally annexed. The movement of its troops violates a 1974 ceasefire agreement with Syria, which Israel argued is null since Assad's government has collapsed. I guess they made the deal with that government. Though the agreement was struck with his father 50 years ago, the Israeli military has also posted soldiers atop the Syrian side of the 9,000-foot Mount Hermon, which also falls within the ceasefire demilitarized zone. So what appears to have happened is Assad went down and Israel just ran directly into Syria, like, hurry, the time is now, while they're all
Yeah.
fucked up in there.
Exactly. It's like we've been talking about with as a recap, the Greater Israel plot. Like, it started off sounding kind of fringy, like, oh yeah, I'm sure that's what's going on, but now it's just very open and out there that is what is happening. They are taking over the region at the behest of the United States, because yes, Israel is a wealthy colony, and has a lot of industry and stuff, which I hear is suffering, and I hope that that's true. But because they have no business being there, obviously they're an invader, they are colonizers, they should not be there. But we have to, as the United States, as Jared was saying, has to take charge of any area that is creating in any kind of issue for us, or trying to stand on their own 2 feet, and America can't have that. So it has to find someone that it in the region that it can invest in to do that kind of work. And a lot of the whole, fighting robot things and AI technology came out of Israel through grants from the United States. We've been pumping money into them for a long, long time, and then Israelis like to act like there's some very old culture. And it's like, you look into your history and your grandparents came from New Jersey. You guys are nothing. So they are in a position to do whatever America tells them to do, and they think they're going to come out on top of this. No, we get to rule this empire. No, you get to be another one of America's toys at the end of the day, and that's where we are at. It's just, we've been talking about this all year, because it's just like, here's the next step in it, here's the next step in it, here's the next step in it. And that's what this is. Now they have usurped Syria, and it's obviously been going on for a while, but they took their opportunity and they've gone in there. And the confusing part seems to be like who all is involved and why, because we're getting things thrown at us like, oh, ISIS is involved, and it's like, ISIS, where the hell did ISIS come from in this, and what did they get out of this? So because they were American created, but
The U.S. likes to follow its like classic playbook of, you find a group within a country that you want to destabilize or keep on its heels, from getting as much stuff done. You find groups and you give them money and sprinkle some weapons in there, maybe, depending. And then whoever emerges as the most effective and usually the craziest, you just keep giving more money to, and then hopefully they'll go do a revolution, and you can be like, no, it was them, it was the people.
Yeah, and in the meantime, you're taking all the land and taking all the resources out of it and selling off the beachfront property, and
you're sitting on literally the oil fields of Syria,
right?
And you just stand there with your gun, and they just behind you get to keep BP in them.
And that's something that we brought up many times. This is an investment to America. This isn't a gift. This isn't, you are our friends, we really want to help you get on your feet, Israel. This is using Israel as the attack dog. That it's the proxy, just like using Ukraine as the proxy to go at Russia. Like, does that really make sense when you look at now Ukraine's talking about drafting teenagers? That is always the end of a conflict. When they you can look at it historically all across the board. When you start dragging children into the fighting, it is over. But we have had senators, and I think you could probably just say Lindsey Graham said it, but there's not just him. It's because he says all the dumb shit, but he says it, and they are sitting on quadrillions of dollars worth of minerals and oils and different I don't know. I don't know exactly, but apparently it's a very earth-rich area, Ukraine I'm talking about. And
Yeah.
the United States doesn't want to give that up. It's much less about conflict with Russia and much more about making sure that America gets it and not Russia. That's really what the conflict boils down to. And that's what the conflict boils down to in Syria, plus also gaining control of the region to irritate Iraq and Saudi Arabia and try to get them all to bend the knee to America as per usual by decimating their economies and making them beholden to the empire. So that's the next step. We don't really have much more than that to say because we can only talk about what's happening as it's happening. So if you play back all of our old episodes, we have basically talked about every step in this, and we will continue to do so. But if you want to talk about what might happen, where this could go, is it was really great to see all this pushback against Israel and against the genocide against Palestine. That's something that people have really never done before. Somewhat, the biggest thing you compare it to is the pushback against Vietnam and the war in Vietnam, and saying, hey, we don't have no business there. We don't need to be doing this. You're killing people for no reason. You're poisoning the earth. This. But now people are so much more connected that they're uniting against it. But the uniting against it has basically done nothing. Because the American empire and NATO and everything, they are not concerned with people being upset, and they should be, but they're not. And that is what basically leads us into our next topic. Somebody finally took some things into their own hands. That's where we essentially are. To me, and I'm going to get Jared a chance to talk here, but I want to point out just real quick about the suspect that they've come up, Mr. Luigi. It feels a very wag the dog situation to me. It would be,
want to put a
when,
vote out. Do you think Luigi is fake, or
right? Yeah, like
is this an
I
op?
do. I honestly I'm not saying he's not the guy, but I also am not saying he is the guy, because if the info that they're releasing about this, he's just this like really weirdly patchwork of a guy. Like vaguely right, vaguely tech bro, too good looking, like reads a lot of books, and more than one by Steve-O, apparently, and doesn't do music, but likes Carly Rae Jepsen. Like these things, it feels very much like, the FBI, like, and he does this, and he does that, and he does this guy. It feels very, very, very manufactured to me. Time will tell, but this whole thing is a fucking mess. As far as I'm concerned, and just with the catching of the guy and who they're saying he is, the whole scenario is great, and I'm not going to pretend like it isn't. This is a long time coming, and this is what happens. This is what happens when you push people too far.
It's more and more. It's more and more evidence of just the general, I don't know, degrading, the increasing shittiness of just people. People feel hopeless. The fact that people smarter than me, I end up stealing their opinions and making them my own. But somebody online, they're like, man, if this happened back in like 1905 or something, the I guess the haute bourgeoisie, because that's the other like wrinkle to this. People are discussing of finally some of the owning class are getting killed, and it's like a CEO they still are technically an employee.
Yeah.
A CEO still is beholden to a group of shareholders where if they do not behave in a way that maximizes their profit, they could be arrested. Well, not arrested, but you're going to get fired and potentially fined, but like
or something
legally.
happened to them.
There is a legal requirement for publicly shared companies to behave in ways that maximizes returns for shareholders. So even if there was just as equally likely of a chance that maybe that CEO was going to walk into that meeting and say, you know what, fellas, we're changing everything. We're going to approve every claim, and we're going to just send everybody their money back for their premiums. We don't care. That would be one of his shareholders killing him.
Yeah. It's just, I think that at this point, I think what is really resonating with people, because people are loving this. They don't care about this guy, and that guy is going straight to hell, and everybody knew it. Like his job exists to make money for people.
It's like if somebody found an executioner and killed him because like, oh, you executed him. It's like, yep, that is his job to do that, and it is fucked up.
Yeah. But the thing of this was a multimillionaire. This guy, but Brian Thompson, I think is his name. Who even cares? He's just a guy.
Oh, Nicolette, you've chirped out for me, but that could be my fault.
You can't hear me? You're not hearing me? Are you frozen? I can see you.
Did I go out or did you go out?
Okay, I can hear you. Okay, give us 1 second here.
That's good. Because if I'm going out, you're gonna have audio issues for me anyway, so I'm not sure. And
Okay,
I'm like,
I
do
can
I
hear
keep
you.
talking? Do I keep
So you
talking, or do
can't
I
hear
be
me.
quiet and let them? Oh, I hear you now.
Oh, you hear me now? Okay, all right.
Yeah. Sounds a little bit like a bad phone call, but that could be on my end.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. All my stuff is still running. It's tech problems abound. But
Oh, I think I'm back.
okay. Yeah, I can hear you. I've been able to hear you and see you the whole time with regular gain. So.
It's probably my fault. That's
Okay.
why I
Yeah.
shut up, because I'm like, I'm making it worse.
Well, the thing of it is like this has got people absolutely giddy, and it almost it doesn't matter really who did it and why they did it. It doesn't matter if maybe they were just an assassin for no reason. The fact of the matter is that it happened, and it is highly inspirational because this is the way that things change. This is change, and I don't think anybody gives a shit about the CEO, and he got what he deserved. And I don't think anybody will disagree with that unless you're the kind of person who thinks that the stripper likes you, or that, if you got to meet Elon, he'd think you were cool. So at the end of the day here, this is a good thing, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. I'm just not going to. And I think that's the way a lot of people feel about this, is that this is a long time coming, a really long time coming. It's incredibly surprising that it hasn't happened before. And should there be copycats that go on or at least make attempts on this? That's where we have come to, and they've only got themselves to blame for it. So that's and what has been the response? These CEOs like just double up on their security and try to hide their identity on their websites, but people don't forget, and that's what's really important, I think, about this whole thing. That are you trying to talk and am I talking over you? Can you hear me?
No, I think
okay.
we're still good.
I didn't know it was happening again. No, that's the whole thing. I mean, and it's what's even more important than the action that happened and whether you're for or against it. And if you're against it, you're just shut up. But this is a long time coming, and this is the time to try to move the needle on universal health care, because the healthcare industry, the pharmaceutical industry pay politicians outrageous sums of money to keep them from making a public option or doing anything, like that other, just the standard, basic standard that other countries have of universal health care, some for hundreds of years, So at this point, if people manage to keep the fear in these people, because there was the walk back with the anesthesia. That was some fucking timing where, what was it? Blue Cross Blue Shield said that they were not going to pay for past a certain amount of minutes for anesthesia. And then that would be on the patient. And then like 5 minutes later, like, you want to take that back? Are you sure that's what you want to say right now? And then they're like, no, actually, we'll take care of it. It's fine.
I hope people keep track of that, because I would not be shocked if in like a month they just do it anyway. Because like, okay, people will stop paying attention.
Anyway. Exactly. And they have said before, they all have this kind of protocol of like getting threats, because when they tell they tell a parent, no, we're not going to let your terminally ill child be in comfort until they die. We're not paying for that. Good luck. They get death threats, unsurprisingly. But at this point, we are in a situation, again, with the term, that I throw around a lot, the runaway capitalism, where people are not in control of what's happening to them. Everything's being shitified to the point that nothing runs functionally anymore. People are just, this top echelon of people have figured out how to squeeze, the rest of the population so much in every single aspect of life that everything has become a scam. And no one is well, and no one is living well, and we're not guaranteed anything that we should have. This is the time to not let this just, fade out into the ether as another news story. This is the time to make a movement out of this.
It's been interesting watching what the goal, if I have any kind of goals with this, as if as if my goals matter in the grand scheme of the world here. But the thing that I think you can take from this that would be useful is if you can use it to radicalized, that word gets thrown around too much now, but like to try to, I don't know, shake people out of it, to try to move people closer to a, hey, we're all in this together. At least 99.9% of us are all in this together. I've seen I watched, it was like Matt Walsh or something, one of the right wing grift sphere people, people who I do not believe care about anything but money, and because they change their opinions on day to day, based on making money, which is what a grifter actually is. He was trying to be like, oh, left wing, blah, 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 is all happy about the CEO. And then all his comments are like, left wing? What are you talking about? Like, this isn't like a left thing. And then the same thing, people on the left trying to, oh, right wing, blah, blah. And they're like, what are you talking about? This is one of those things where, I mean, especially before we have the suspect which, believe or not, whether or not he's actually the guy, but before we had an actual human to start checking through, which made it really just, before we had an actual human to start looking at, and before we could throw any of this freaking direction brain nonsense where everyone has to fight about, like, well, was he left or right? And that will then help me form my opinion on this entirely unrelated action to his left or rightness in my own view. Like, they're kind of, unity. Hooray, everyone. Look, everybody, we all have these... We all think healthcare should get fixed. A thing we've known for a long time, because back when Bernie was yelling about it, my favorite stat was like 60% of Republican voters support Medicare for all, basically. Yeah. So it's like, look, this is not actually this is a bipartisan issue. Everyone really agrees on this. And then it was disappointing to see that once we have Luigi, people are desperately running through his stuff to stick an R or a right or a left onto him. And it makes me mad.
Yeah. And, I also, I don't know if I've mentioned this on the show before, but I actually have a problem with the term Medicare for all, because if you know anything about the Medicare situation, it is terrible.
Medicare's shitty, yeah.
It is dog shit. That's more insurance. It's more insurance. It's just another form of insurance where they don't give you anything. It is not that what we need to be saying and updating the terminology to is universal health care, because we're talking about literal universal healthcare. And if you haven't noticed, if you even have insurance, I haven't had insurance since I was like 25 years old. I'm 39 now. And if you have if you are in any kind of insurance situation, then you already know you're waiting a year or more to go see a doctor. Especially if you're a new patient, you are constantly having Medicare or Medicaid call you up and tell you that they're, you're not using our preferred medication. We're going to switch your medications. And you have to have your doctor intervene to say, hey, actually, no, they cannot do that. No, needs are not being met. And they're doing this because they're usually using people to scrape money out of to enrich themselves. These CEOs are millionaires. They're multimillionaires. These companies are multi-billion-dollar companies because of you, and because of deciding you don't get your end-of-life care, and because of deciding they're not paying for an experimental treatment for your kid, and because of deciding that they're not going to give you the medication that you need. That is where we are in this, and it is not tenable, obviously, and it cannot stand. Not to mention the fact that when you get these bad faith arguments about people saying, well, I don't want to pay for, okay, well, I don't care what you don't want to pay for. You're already paying like 20% of your paycheck to go to, to a health insurance deal situation anyways, rather than paying something closer to like 4% for a nationalized healthcare system. So there is no sustainable argument. And in a time when we are sending billions and billions of dollars to fight wars and kill people in Israel and Ukraine, and we're forgiving these debts to Ukraine right and left, people see this on both sides of the spectrum, on the whole spectrum, wherever you want to call yourself. This is visible to everyone. And the money, if you want to total up the money that's been sent to Israel and Ukraine just alone, would have paid for Medicaid, would have paid for nationalized healthcare system, universal healthcare system, probably 5 times over at this point. It is not as expensive as people make it out to be. That is a bad faith argument every single time.
If you want to get even, just add more and more wrinkles to this. The thing that I hope that this leads to is more interrogation of this system, and hopefully more realistic view on how things actually work here. United, just specifically United, because that's who's the CEO who got shot. They get about 26% of their total revenue, at least they're expected to, according to this article I'm looking at, from Medicare and retirement, meaning it's government money. So 26% of United's revenue is just your own tax. Like, we already pay through our taxation system for universal healthcare that we just
Yes.
don't actually get.
Have access to. Exactly.
It's so much more frustrating than just, oh, we don't have healthcare, we don't have a healthcare system. It's like, no, we already have an apparatus large and expensive and complicated enough to have 10 healthcare systems that everybody could just be using, but instead it just gets like set on fire. Just an
Yes.
insane amount of corporate waste that is government waste, that because the government pays the companies and the companies, like, we think that we have these private sector and public sector, and they're separate, and they actually compete with each other, and the private sector is trying to name a big company that is successful on a grand scale, and you are naming a company that receives massive government subsidies either directly or indirectly because the government does this business, which then feeds into the greater, like, it's all just an insane amount of your money being put directly into private hands, and then you're told you are not allowed to use it.
Yeah, you can't
bought
have
the
it back.
hospital 10
That's
times
right.
over already.
And it's like if you ever go to a hospital, they're in terrible condition. They have horrible ratings. They're dirty. They, like they
We
have
spend more money than any other country on our healthcare, apparently,
Yes.
and it's
It is horrible, horrible. I'm not going to sit here and listen to anybody sit and say my healthcare is great. I pay an adequate amount of money. I get really good service. I can have, and when I call my doctor's office, someone answers. That is not a thing. It doesn't even function well because they have dismantled it and pushed this whole concept of, Medicaid Advantage plans on older people where they're just paying money and getting nothing. Just paying and paying and paying and getting nothing. And it's not, you're not going to hear the first time in your life old people, by me saying it about old people choosing between medication and food. Like you've been hearing that your entire life. I know you have. This is not new, but somehow at some point people decided that these companies to hit overdrive, and they are just absolutely draining people to death. And now we've got these sort of bounty systems of how to determine how are people likely to live. They're doing that to people. No one should be doing that to anyone, so that they can determine, we're not going to fill this prescription for you anymore because statistically you're probably only going to live a couple more years. Fuck you. You don't have that data. That's not your information to have. So you're not going to sit here and tell me that the medical system is working well, or that if we switched over that it would be worse. It wouldn't be. Every other country in the world, developed country in the world, can seem to manage it. Why not this one? Because of fucking greed and corruption. And that's where we are. And we cannot this expands beyond healthcare. We cannot let this stuff stand anymore. You cannot watch billions and billions of dollars go out to other countries and get told that their debts are going to get forgiven, and that we're paying their pensions and we're buying their supplies to make sure that they have quote unquote money in their pockets. I don't give a shit if a Ukrainian person has money in their pockets or not. That is not my problem at this point. I want everybody to have good lives, but not at the expense of other people. That is what we are dealing with here. All of this has to change. And that is why we have this show. That is why we came to this belief system. That is why people, are that there is even a left. It's not organized, but it is out there. And, if you have these beliefs, you don't want to call yourself leftist, don't. It doesn't matter. The title doesn't matter. But we know that this is not tenable and it cannot stand. And if it's just left to keep going unchecked because the politicians have looked the other way, what is going to happen? It's going to get worse and worse and worse. And you're not going to tell me that it's anything good or worth fighting for now. And not in good faith. There's a lot of trolls out there and nonsense people that, say that it is, but it isn't. It's trash. The system is trash. Everything is trash, but in particular healthcare. And if this can manage to stay in people's minds, then that's going to be how things change. Look how fast that they walked back the Blue Cross walked back the anesthesia thing. But Jared's probably right. They probably will do it anyway. They're just trying to be quiet about it until somebody finds out.
You stop paying attention.
Yeah.
I'm very curious to see how healthcare ends up looking up, and how it ends up looking in the U.S. like moving forward, because like clearly this is an untenable system.
Yes.
So it's like, are people right when they say that like if you just eliminate all of the insane amount of waste, would costs go down enough? And I think for like normal, just everyday healthcare, where it's like, hi, I'm gonna go see my doctor for my once a year physical, and oh look, I have to take this pill, or oh I need antibiotics, or I need a cream, like basic stuff like that. I find it very compelling when people say that if you just eliminated all of this insane waste, I mean, how many millions of dollars go into staffing call centers to tell people they can't get healthcare? Like, how many layers of middle management and advertising and freaking $700
Advertising.
band-aids and all this nonsense? Like, how much would it actually cost, like for real, to
Right.
to get like the 20 minutes of my doctor's time that I actually use per year with when nothing's happening? Because most people don't have horrible medical emergencies happening at all times. For the most part, you just need some maintenance, and then if you get that maintenance, you're less likely to have these big that's the other part of it. If you get your regular health care throughout your life, how much expense would be eliminated in medical
Yeah.
emergencies you're dealing with later, because they just weren't dealt with when they would have been easier and cheaper to deal with. Even though, on top of all that, you do have to have something for people who are just insane sick and need, like, what if you have crazy kidney disease that is very, very expensive? What if you have various things that are just going to be super expensive?
Yes.
Like, you got to be able to freaking take care of that. Like, as a society, you have
Yes.
to be able to deal
Yes,
with
it is your ability to help other people, even if you don't like them.
it.
That is what living in a goddamn society means. You've got to do these things, and these things work. In a collusion type of way. The people that produce the junk food and the sodas and things like that know that it is killing people, which drives them into the medical system, which drives them into the funerary system. These people, it's not conspiratorial to think that these top number one people of all of these companies and all of these industries have spoken to each other. Like to have an idea here, right?
Did you see
Like
they're
that.
going to take out some of the dyes, they said?
Yeah, right.
Maybe.
Like that. Well, that's the thing. It's like okay, so like there was if I let me think about who said this. Who was the one that said this? I'm suddenly drawing a blank on it. Oh well, never mind. I'll come back around to it when if somebody that kind of turned my mind onto this, but I can't think of who it is. His name all of a sudden. But he was a civil rights activist, but I can't. I'm just drawing a blank. Anyways, point being is that not educating people and giving them poor education and putting them in poor economic systems that make them vulnerable to not being able to have access to healthy food, or not being able to have the knowledge of how to eat healthfully. There are people out there who literally have no idea that a cucumber is healthier than Cheetos. I'm not joking. It is a real thing. But also at the same time, the salad is, $15. The bag of Doritos is $5. What are poor people going to do? They're forced into this situation and they can't do anything about it. And that is where the money is being made. We know, and we've heard it over and over and over again, that it is way more expensive to be poor than it is to be wealthy, because you're constantly in the loop of late fees, junk charges, getting charged more by certain companies for certain services. We know that the junk food is cheaper than the healthy food. We know that it costs more to clothe yourself if you're, a larger sized person, which cuts a bigger, bite out of your budget. There's all these ways to just harm people. This is not harm reduction. This is harm causing. This causes, harm. This keeping people in the dark about things and then keeping the access out of their reach, causes them to get involved into these situations. So maybe if they had been better educated or had better access to healthier food, they wouldn't have maybe gotten to a situation where they now have like a heart disease thing that isn't genetic, something that was environmentally caused. If they had healthier air to breathe, they wouldn't have asthma. So they're easily, these can dry, it's cyclical. It's not conspiratorial. It's literally what's going on.
It's another
And
one of
not
those
every country
boring.
runs that way. And my question always is how far can Americans be pushed? I'm asking the question. I'm not setting up something here. I'm asking the question. How far can Americans be pushed? Because I think that we have reached a point now, a critical point, where not much further. For someone at least, they did the job. and look how many people took shots at Trump here recently. They didn't do any good. But the point is that like people, so somehow like these like non-gun laws of America have like have circled back around to help solve the problems of America. I don't know exactly how to explain that, but I mean, like anything, I guess. It's such a mess. Like there's so much mess that needs untangled, but we need people in mass to put the energy into that, to, whether it be putting fear into these people or not, but something has to change. And it's got to start, with grassroots at this point of what people are going to take. And it's not going to be team red or team blue. They're compromised. They're the ones that are sitting there, taking the money. And that's not a secret either. You can look at who gets what money and which industries contribute the most to making these people into the pseudo celebrities that they believe that they are. So
That's the thing I want. That's one thread that I can vibe with like, oh, is it F? I keep wanting to say FDR Jr. RFK. RFK Jr. has a lot of supporters who like, except him being an insane Zionist is the part where I like to bring up to anybody who's a big supporter is like, so how do you square everything else with the fact that he's like super pro-Israel? But when he says, like, when people around him who enjoy him, who support him politically, will say things like, I don't want to ban XYZ, I just want to have access to the data so I can make a decision. And I'm over here like, yes, I don't really know how dangerous these food dyes are because the only studies you can find about them are paid for by
by the
freaking
people
Fruit
making them.
Loops.
Yeah,
Like, I
exactly.
want to get some. Can we? And it's almost impossible in America. It's if you start pulling on any of these threads, and you keep going with it, eventually you become a communist. But because like you can't just do we can't just fix healthcare in this one way. We can't just fix policing in this one way. It ends up becoming a general. If you fix society, these are problems that start going away. But
Yes.
there are no silver bullet. Like, how do we fix policing? It's like, well, you really have to fix crime. How do you fix crime? Well, you have to fix poverty. How do you fix poverty? Well, you really have to, and you just go up and up and
Yeah.
up, and then you actually start working at stuff. Like, that is I think the usefulness of this.
Yes.
How many CEOs could be killed that would then create a healthcare change in a way that we all kind of want? And I argue you could kill all of them. You could kill every single healthcare. They could all have a weird Metal Gear Solid, like, oh, they all die because the fox die virus went off in their head. And then tomorrow they would, okay, now next guy comes up, does the exact same job, because at this point their function is barely even needed. They're kind of like a king within the company. A lot of these guys are like figureheads. We all talk about how they do nothing. Freaking, I know about mostly about the video game CEOs like Bobby Kotick at freaking Activision. We argue how he does nothing, is bad at his job, but what do? They serve whatever shareholders and maximize profit for them, so they get to still be the CEO.
Yeah.
They're like the highest paid servant of of the fucking shadow people that actually, I say shadow people. At this point, I think we're getting closer to a Matrix situation where is anyone even making intentional lever pulling things, or is the
Right.
system just kind of set up and just rolling along now, and people come, people go, but the functions still get performed? We haven't really had a president for like 2 years. Things continue
At
rolling
least, yeah.
on. The
Yep.
wars are starting themselves, I guess, now. Like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like, what is this going to be? Like a Cyberdyne Skynet situation coming up here? I mean, we're at that point, like where the wars start themselves, and then, it's like, yeah, it's who's in control at this point.
a few
What is
thousand
control?
shareholders, kinda, but none of them individually make any of these decisions. It's kind of just like they're just guided by, really, it's interest. It's what things will help us, and those are the things that happen due to various, like, reams and millions of words of contracts and systems and stock market regulations and blah 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 that hold things where they are right now and just kind of keep moving in that direction.
Yes.
Syria took like 13 years to get toppled, but just like Iraq and Libya and all that shit before it, it eventually did fall to the same machinations that the other ones did. And
You have to think if you want the good team bad team argument, it's always money and resources that keeps people feeding the system and feeding the machine. So it comes down to the proletariat and then the bourgeoisie. So
That's what
but
stops the system can't
yes.
continue if like the bottom layer of it stops doing stuff.
Yeah,
Like if
it
the
is
shipping
entirely
stops.
reliant on basically the mechanization and the death of the proletariat. So the idea behind that is like with every major revolution going back to ancient Rome, we get the guillotines out at some point. The axe handles and the guillotines come out at some point because things become untenable. And I have actually seen uh, some I'm not sure exactly. I'm not, a statistician and like a data person in this way, but I have seen where people have correlated the data of what the earning gap between, the serfs essentially and the like Marie Antoinette, like in her era, like it was like the
The lords,
1790s,
the
like the lords and the rich. Thank you. I was trying to think of the words. You're correct. Yeah, well, the kingdom and that, and like it really aligns very closely with the disparage in earning and
You can
living
argue it's
now.
worse. You can
Yeah.
argue that a serf made slightly like the income gap was slightly less in the
Yes.
frickin' Great Depression era than it is right now. Like,
And that's where people started losing their heads at that point. And when you look at the Bolshevik revolution in Russia, it was under the same sort of conditions. It's like people eventually reached their breaking point, arguably way sooner than America has. We have this country of apathy, generation after generation of apathy, not necessarily deliberate apathy, like I want to be miserable, god damn it, that's my right as an American. That's not it. It's just bred into us that, oh, this is what it is. You can't fight the man. They're in charge. You're not. You'll never have the kind of money and resources that they have. So just sit down, shut up, and go to your job until you stroke out and die. And that is what we're essentially living, the world we are living in. But eventually people are going to wake up to it. And it looks like that's only just beginning now. So do I have hope for the future? No. But do I want to have hope for the future as far as that goes? Yes. That's the whole reason we do this, is because if one person tunes in that didn't necessarily have that information, or we're able to change the mind of like one person, that's one more person who's not going to is going to be mad as hell and not going to take it anymore. And that's what we need to really look into as we go forward. And obviously, again, the situation is evolving, and we're living in a really weird time with the whole AI investment and everything like that nobody's asking for and nobody wants, except for corporations who are going to use it against people. But we're seeing what's happening in real time, and it sucks. It fucking sucks, and everybody hates it. But on that note, do you have a song for us today, Mr. Jared?
I got nothing. I am
Nothing.
in the same way that I'm freaking clearing my throat constantly.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm saving
No.
this. Not
That's
even
yeah.
saving this.
I wanted to make sure before I did any sign off, because I think this has been a really good conversation today. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't cutting into your music time. Okay. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being with us for this episode. We appreciate you. As always, you can watch our past episodes on our YouTube channel and on our on Rumble. And we can watch us live on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube also. And we will be back next week for our last show of 2024. Hooray. Goodbye,
Yeah.
2024. And then we're gonna have a couple weeks off, like all of you, or most of you, hopefully most of you.
Christmas
And
break.
we'll be back in the new year after that. So thank you for joining us once again. And we our DMs are open. You can always send us questions, comments. For some reason, I don't know what's going on with Twitter, but like I can't imagine it's because they just magically got rid of all the bots suddenly. Now is the time that they did that.
It
But
has seemed to, at least for the last couple weeks.
hasn't it been weird? Yeah, okay. And I know this isn't
Maybe you
about
did it.
I know this isn't about blue sky migration either. I know that you can't just all just be like, oh, everybody went to blue sky, deleted their accounts. Some fuck they didn't. So, but anyways, follower accounts I'm hearing from everybody are dropping like crazy. I don't know what the reason of it is, but it's a perfect time to start following the people that you want to hear from. So, like, follow, subscribe, do all that stuff. And we will see you next year. Or I mean, we will see you next week and then next year, but we will see you next week and to talk about whatever fresh hell has been going on with all of that. And when we hop off here, we'll see if anything crazy is going on like it did last week. So thank you so much for joining us. Take care of yourselves and each other. Don't give up on this healthcare thing. Be mean to CEOs. All of them, everyone. So thank you, everybody. Take care.
Good night.